Welcome to the Deep Dive. We take your sources, articles, research, notes, and, well, we dig deep to pull out the key insights for you.
That's the goal.
Today, we're tackling a really heavy one, a case that just keeps coming back, sparking debate. The Jeffrey Epstein scandal. It's in the news again, but, the story goes way back. And for us, it just raises these fundamental questions about justice, accountability, and, well, power itself.
Exactly. And that's kind of our mission today. We're not just recounting facts. We want to unpack the timeline, sure, but also explore the controversies around it.
And then get into some maybe surprising ideas about who really holds the reins in society.
Yeah, looking at the material you provided, we want to sift through it all, give you a clear, informed perspective on what the sources are saying.
Okay, let's start unpacking. The Epstein story really blew up initially back in, 2008?
That's right, 2008. He was facing these incredibly serious charges. We're talking rape of minors, sex trafficking, really heavy stuff.
And then comes the part that I think still shocks people today.
The plea deal.
Exactly. Despite how serious those charges were, rape of minors, forced prostitution, he somehow got this secret plea deal.
Yeah, with a federal prosecutor, Alexander Acosta. And it was all done very quietly behind closed doors. It meant he avoided any serious jail time.
Which, when it eventually came out, caused huge public outrage. Right?
Understandably so. The nature of the crimes versus the outcome, it was jarring.
And the consequence was, well, he was essentially free for over 10 years after that.
And the reports suggest, tragically, that during that decade, the number of victims actually grew. It really frames those questions about influence and maybe protection.
And that prosecutor, Acosta, his career didn't end there, did it?
No. He went on to become Secretary of Labor under President Trump.
But that past deal came back to haunt him.
It did. He ended up resigning in 2019. There was just immense public pressure after Epstein was rearrested, bringing that whole secret deal back into the spotlight. It shows how these things can have long tails.
Which brings us neatly to 2019, the rearrest, July 6th.
Right. He just landed at Teterboro Airport, private jet from France, and boom, arrested.
And the new charges were, if anything, even more extensive. Operating a sex trafficking ring, dozens of girls, some sources say as young as 13 or 14.
Just horrific details coming out.
But then, barely a month later, August 9th, Epstein is dead, in custody.
Officially ruled a suicide.
Yeah.
But that's where things got even murkier, didn't they?
Yeah, the controversy exploded almost immediately.
Because there were all these questions. Missing surveillance footage was a big one, reportedly about a minute missing right around the critical time.
And that just poured fuel on the fire? Was it really suicide or was it, a murder? Silencing him.
Exactly. The speculation ran wild. And it really amplified all the existing questions about transparency, accountability, who knew what.
Throughout this whole saga, though, we really have to give credit where it's due, especially to the media.
Absolutely.
The Miami Herald, in particular, they were just relentless. They kept digging, kept investigating. Even after that 2008 plea deal seemed to have, put a lid on it.
Their persistence was crucial. Without that kind of investigative journalism, who knows if the full story, or at least what we know now, would have ever emerged.
Their work confirmed, over 60 victims initially?
Yes, over 60 confirmed through their investigation. But then later, looking at civil lawsuits and other materials we reviewed, the number seemed much higher, potentially hundreds.
And that's probably not even the full picture.
Likely not. Because, as the source material points out, many victims were just unwilling to come forward publicly. Given the circumstances, the power dynamics involved, you can understand why. It makes getting the true scope incredibly difficult.
So this whole case, with the secrecy, the influence, the delayed justice, it really forces you to think bigger picture, doesn't it? About power.
It really does.
Yeah.
There's this provocative idea, a political theory mentioned in the sources.
The one about who you can't criticize.
Exactly. The theory suggests that if you want to know who really runs a country, look at who is beyond criticism, who can't be openly discussed or named without serious repercussions.
Okay, let's explore that. In some places, like China, it seems pretty clear, right? Criticizing certain leaders like Xi Jinping is basically off limits.
Yeah, the sources point that out. Certain names are just untouchable in the public sphere there.
But here in the U.S., it feels different. Presidents, Congress, political parties, they get scrutinized, criticized, even ridiculed constantly. It's part of the system.
Right. So applying that theory here, it leads to a really interesting, almost uncomfortable question. Who then, in the U.S., operates beyond that kind of open discussion or criticism?
It implies someone or some entity does.
It does. And a case like Epstein's, with all its unanswered questions about powerful connections, makes you really contemplate that. Who might be protected?
And this idea of hidden power, untouchable elites, it connects directly to some of the stranger corners of the internet, right? Like QAnon.
Definitely. The QAnon movement, led by this anonymous Q figure, really latched onto the Epstein story. It fit perfectly into their narrative.
What was that narrative, basically?
Well, the core claim was that U.S. elites, and they named people across the board, Trump, Clinton, Obama, were supposedly controlled by this shadowy cabal involved in pedophilia and child abuse.
And Epstein was seen as proof.
Kind of a central node in that alleged network, yeah. And QAnon followers, who, as our research notes, were overwhelmingly Trump supporters, something like over 80%.
Right.
They believed that Q and Trump were going to expose it all, end all this, as they put it, during Trump's first term.
And Trump himself leaned into this, didn't he? Campaign promises about draining the swamp.
He did. The sources highlight his campaign promise to expose the dirty swamp in Washington. And releasing the Epstein files, specifically naming names, was presented as a key part of that pledge, taking down these powerful figures allegedly involved in abuse.
But then the files weren't released, and the story from his own Justice Department seemed to, well, change.
Yeah, the material we looked at describes a really confusing sequence. First, the claim was apparently that no such Lister files even existed. Then, reportedly, the narrative shifted. It was suggested that maybe Obama and Hillary Clinton had somehow fabricated the files.
Fabricated them? To what end?
That part wasn't clear from the source. That later, another shift. Maybe the files existed, but were manipulated or altered by authorities.
Oh, a lot of conflicting stories.
It is. And the analysis included in our sources suggests a possible reason for the non-disclosure. Trump's own name reportedly appears multiple times in those documents.
Which, if true, would certainly complicate releasing them.
It raises a lot of questions. For example, if the previous administration had fabricated or manipulated files like that, why wasn't that a massive point of attack during Trump's re-election campaign? You'd think it would be.
That's a good point.
And the material also notes something else interesting. The Democratic Party, now in power, hasn't exactly pursued the Epstein case aggressively against Trump either.
Even though it seems like potential political ammunition.
You'd think so. But the source suggests this might point to something broader. Maybe it's like how political parties sometimes champion issues when they're out of power, but then drop them when they get in.
Because the issue touches on something more systemic, something that implicates more than just one party.
That seems to be the implication in the analysis we reviewed. That it's not just a partisan football, but points to a deeper, perhaps more uncomfortable reality about influence that cuts across party lines.
And now recently we've seen this push from within the Republican Party to release the files.
Yeah, some Republican lawmakers facing election season have started joining the public calls for disclosure.
Which must be driven by intense public pressure.
Apparently so. The sources cite this striking ratio. For every one constituent opposing disclosure, there are reportedly 100 who support it.
Wow. That's huge pressure.
Immense. Especially for Republicans in potentially tight races. It's led to some interesting political maneuvering, like House Speaker Johnson apparently trying to delay a vote by adjourning Congress, while also reportedly lobbying those rebelling Republicans to back down.
Fascinating dynamics. Now, let's pivot to another controversial voice in all this, Tucker Carlson.
Right. He definitely waded in with some highly provocative allegations.
What specifically was he claiming?
Well, he directly challenged the official story about where Epstein got his vast wealth. He went further, suggesting Epstein might have been working for a foreign intelligence agency. Specifically, Israel's Mossad. That was the allegation.
And the theory was that Mossad was using Epstein.
Carlson's theory, as presented in the sources, was that Epstein might have been using compromising material, photos, videos, whatever, of powerful people, including politicians, possibly with underage girls, as blackmail. Tools of influence, essentially, maybe on behalf of an agency like Mossad.
That's a massive claim.
Huge. And Carlson addressed the sensitivity, stating something like, "There's no reason we can't say the name Israel," suggesting that even mentioning Israel in a critical context is often treated as taboo or immediately framed as anti-Semitic in U.S. discourse.
He denied being anti-Semitic, saying he was just stating facts as he saw them.
Correct. That was his public stance. according to the material.
And the sources connect this idea of certain topics being off limits to other real-world examples.
Yeah, the material brings up the recent incident at Columbia University. The university apparently paid damages, apologized over issues related to Jewish students, and limitations on criticism. They even set up a new office specifically to protect Jewish students and, importantly, regulate speech against Jewish people.
So the source presents this as another instance where certain groups or topics might be seen as difficult or even impossible to criticize openly without facing significant backlash.
That seems to be the connection being drawn. It keeps circling back to that original theory. Who or what is beyond reproach in our society?
How was Carlson's specific Mossad allegation received?
Swiftly and strongly rejected, at least officially, from Israel. Former Prime Minister Naftali Bennett is quoted calling Carlson's claims lies and malicious slander, a very firm denial.
But what about the reaction here in the U.S. media?
That's another point highlighted in the sources. While Carlson's claims definitely stirred conversation online and in certain media circles, the mainstream U.S. press largely stayed silent.
Didn't really touch the specifics of the Mossad allegation?
Not widely, no. And the source material interprets this silence as underscoring the sensitivity around criticizing Israel, especially making allegations of that nature. It suggests a kind of third rail effect.
Okay, we've covered a lot of ground, including some really explosive theories, but we need to be really clear here, don't we?
Absolutely crucial. While these theories, Carlson's, the broader ones about power and influence, are provocative, maybe even compelling to some, they are, as of now, unproven.
There's no smoking gun.
No. The sources emphasize a real lack of verifiable evidence, of independent sources that can actually corroborate these specific claims. It makes it incredibly hard to separate fact from speculation, from conspiracy theory.
And it's important, as we're just conveying what's in the source material, to be careful. Some of this touches on really dangerous territory, right?
Yes. The material itself mentions things like Jewish conspiracy theories, which is language often used to push anti-Semitic tropes. We need to be absolutely clear. We are reporting on the ideas presented in the sources, including the controversial and potentially harmful ones, but we are in no way endorsing them. Distinguishing between reporting on a claim and validating it is vital here.
Especially when there isn't solid multi-sourced evidence, it makes navigating this incredibly difficult.
It does. For anyone trying to analyze this objectively, based purely on confirmed facts, it leaves you in what the source calls a state of suspicion. You have questions, you see inconsistencies, but the concrete proof to confirm or deny many of these theories just isn't there.
So the Epstein case, it's clearly so much more than just one depraved individual.
Oh, absolutely. It's become this kind of dark window into potentially hidden systems of power, influence, maybe even intelligence operations. It forces these really urgent questions about transparency and who is truly accountable.
The complexity of it all, the power dynamics, the media's role, the public's demand for answers, the conspiracy theories swirling around. It's all tangled together.
And as investigations, lawsuits, and public interest inevitably continue, we're left wrestling with that core idea we started with.
The idea of who you can't criticize.
Yeah. If we genuinely want to understand where power lies, maybe we do need to keep asking who or what seems to be off limits for open discussion and scrutiny, even in societies like ours that pride themselves on free speech.
Yeah.
The Epstein saga, in all its darkness, forces that uncomfortable question onto the table.
It certainly gives us, and you listening, a lot to think about.
Indeed. And on a completely different note, if you are interested in exploring history and systems of power in another context, we do have a recommendation based on the source list.
Oh, yes.
Check out A History of China by Hui Wang. It's available on Amazon, covers Chinese history up to the Northern Song Dynasty. Seems like a really well-researched series.
Good recommendation. Ebook and paperback, right?
That's what it says.
Yeah.
Might be interesting for anyone fascinated by ancient civilizations and the long view of how societies work.
Okay, something to consider. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive.
Always interesting. Until next time.